The text came just as the sun was peeking over the skyline of Brooklyn, painting the dusty blinds of my small apartment golden. Sorry, I can't do tonight. You're boring. My blind date, whose name I'd only just learned, Trevor, had decided I wasn't worth his Friday night. And just like that, he walked out of my life before I even had a chance to show him who I really was. But let me back up a little. Before I start, dear listeners, if you've ever felt brushed aside or underestimated, hit that subscribe button and like this story. It helps me share more tales like this. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone walk out on you, thinking they knew your worth? I'd love to hear your stories. My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and I live in a tiny but sunlit apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. It's a third-floor walk-up, walls painted pale cream, windows facing a narrow street where the aroma of bagels and coffee mingles in the morning air. I've lived here for 5 years, ever since I moved after college, working as a freelance graphic designer. My apartment is filled with small comforts: a record player, stacks of dog-eared books, a scratched but sturdy wooden dining table, and the first plant I ever managed to keep alive, a spider plant named Sylvia. The day had started quietly, the way Brooklyn mornings do, the first sunlight streaming through my blinds, the low hum of traffic, the occasional bark from the street dogs, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee from the cafe downstairs. I had been looking forward to tonight all week. Trevor had seemed kind, witty, and adventurous when we chatted online. He had promised a night of laughter and music, and I had bought tickets to the Ember Lane concert, the indie band I'd loved since college. I'd even gone out to get ready properly. My hair, usually pulled back in a lazy bun, was now loose and curled around my shoulders. I wore a soft, sky blue dress that brushed my knees, paired with black ankle boots that clicked against the wooden floor as I walked to the front door. My reflection in the mirror caught me by surprise. I looked confident. I had been ready to enjoy a night of connection, only to have it vanish like smoke. Trevor didn't see any of that. I could still feel the sting in my chest as I sank onto my couch, staring at the tickets in my hand. 2 seats. One for him. One for me. He had walked out, but the tickets remained. And suddenly, the thought came, why should I waste them? Why should I let him take my joy away? The clock read 7:15 p.m. as I grabbed my coat and bag. The streets outside were alive with Friday night energy, neon signs flickering, laughter spilling from open cafe doors. I could hear a busker tuning a guitar on the corner, and the smell of roasted chestnuts wafted from a vendor cart. The city felt electric, almost conspiratorial, as if it were whispering, "Go on, Clara. Do it anyway." At the venue, the lines snaked around the block. Couples, friends, and solo concertgoers chatted animatedly, their excitement palpable. I clutched my tickets, scanning the crowd for Trevor, but of course, he wasn't there. I sighed, taking a deep breath, letting the anticipation of the music wash over the disappointment. I had bought these tickets months ago, saving every extra penny from my freelance work. I knew the band's lead singer, Elliot Hart, was someone whose lyrics could make your chest ache and your heart swell at the same time. I had memorized their songs, hummed them quietly while cooking dinner, and imagined singing along with strangers in the crowd. As I stepped into the dim, buzzing auditorium, the scent of popcorn and soda hit me, mixed with the faint tang of damp velvet seats. I scanned for an open spot, choosing a middle row, center left. My fingers brushed the ticket, seat 14B. Perfect, perfect. And then I noticed him. A man in his early 30s, casually dressed, with sandy hair falling over his forehead and a guitar case slung over his shoulder, smiled at me. He looked like someone who belonged here, not just as a fan, but as part of the music itself. He sat down next to me, nodding politely. "I see you've come alone," he said softly, his voice smooth, warm. "Yes," I said, a little defensive. My date decided I was boring. He chuckled, but not in a mocking way, more like he understood, like he had been where I was before. "You're braver than me," he said. "I'd never go solo, but I think it's the best way to truly hear the music." Something about that made me smile. The band was about to start. The lights dimmed. The energy in the room shifted, vibrating through the floorboards, rising in the air. I leaned back, trying to ignore my racing heart. Little did I know this night, this exact moment, was about to become the night I would never forget. The lights dimmed completely, and the crowd's chatter dissolved into an expectant hush. My heart thumped like a bass drum, a strange mix of anticipation and lingering frustration. I glanced at the man beside me, still smiling gently, hands folded over the guitar case on his lap. He had an aura about him, the kind that made you feel like he knew exactly where you were emotionally, even if you'd just met. The first chords of the band echoed through the auditorium, deep and resonant. A collective murmur rose from the audience as the opening song began. I tried to focus on the music, letting the notes wash over me, but I couldn't help sneaking glances at my mysterious neighbor. "Do you know them well?" I asked, keeping my voice low so I wouldn't disturb the people around us. "More than well," he said, eyes sparkling in the stage light. "I've been following their music for years. Every lyric, every riff, I know it like the back of my hand." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "You're not just a fan, are you?" He laughed softly, a sound that seemed to blend seamlessly with the music. "I guess you could say that. But let's just enjoy the show tonight. No introductions yet." Something about that made me smile. Maybe it was his mysteriousness, or maybe it was the way the crowd's energy combined with the thrill of being here alone. For the first time that evening, I felt like this night was mine, not stolen by Trevor's carelessness. The songs flowed, one after another. I closed my eyes, letting the music pulse through me. The band played with a chemistry that made the room vibrate, and for a few blissful minutes, I forgot about disappointment entirely. Halfway through the set, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned slightly. "Excuse me," he said, leaning closer so only I could hear. I couldn't help but notice, you know every word of Falling Skies. Most people just hum along. You really feel it. I blinked at him, surprised. I do. I've loved their music for years. I've seen every video, memorized every lyric. I guess I just connect with it. "Me too," he said, eyes drifting to the stage. "But some nights, it's not just the music that makes you feel it." I frowned slightly, unsure what he meant, but before I could ask, the lights shifted, signaling the start of the next song. The crowd cheered, and the man beside me turned to watch the stage, his jaw tense, his expression almost reverent. As the song began, something caught my attention. One of the backup guitarists stepped aside, and the lead singer appeared. My chest tightened. I had seen photos, of course, Elliot Hart, but seeing him in person was different. His presence filled the stage, commanding attention effortlessly. He strummed the opening chords of the next song, and a hush fell over the audience. I felt a jolt when the man beside me whispered, almost reverently, "That's him. The one who wrote the songs you love. That's Elliot Hart." I blinked. "Wait, what?" He smiled faintly. I said, "That's him. Right there. The voice, the heart behind every word you've ever sung along to. And yes, he's closer than you think." My stomach dropped. The way he said it, like he had an inside view, made my pulse race. I turned back to the stage, squinting. Elliot was standing there, guitar in hand, eyes scanning the crowd. And then, my eyes met his. My breath caught. He paused mid-strum and tilted his head slightly, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corner of his lips. My mind raced. "No way. That's impossible." The man beside me leaned closer again. "He sees you," he whispered. "Or maybe he feels you. You're not just another face in the crowd tonight. You're different." The song began again, a soft, haunting melody, and Elliot's voice filled the room, smooth and powerful. I could feel every note in my chest, the lyrics winding around my emotions like tendrils of memory and hope. And then, mid-verse, my heart stopped. He spoke into the microphone, his gaze unwavering. "This next song is for someone very special in seat 14B. The woman who came alone but is anything but boring." I froze. My eyes darted to the man beside me, and he grinned knowingly. "Told you," he murmured. The audience erupted into applause, but all I could hear was the melody, the words meant for me. My face warmed, cheeks burning. I couldn't believe it. A song, Live, dedicated to me, all because I had taken a chance, decided not to let one disappointing text ruin my night. I glanced at the man beside me. He winked, just a subtle movement, and nodded toward the stage. Sometimes, he said softly, things have a funny way of turning out better than we imagine, even when the start feels like the end. And at that moment, as Elliot's voice wrapped around me like a warm embrace, I realized something profound. The night was mine, entirely and completely. And the music, the magic, the unexpected thrill, was only just beginning. I could hardly breathe, still pinned in disbelief from Elliot Hart's words. The audience's cheers around me felt muffled, almost surreal. It was like I had stepped into another dimension, one where a wronged evening could suddenly become the most unforgettable night of my life. The man beside me leaned back slightly, his fingers tapping a quiet rhythm on the guitar case. I told you, he murmured, a teasing lilt in his voice. Life has a way of surprising the brave. I wanted to respond, to ask him everything, who he was, how he seemed to know so much, but the music held me captive. Elliot's voice soared, the lyrics carving themselves into my mind with an intimacy that made every heartbreak and hope I'd ever felt seem magnified. And all the while, I felt the man's gaze on me, steady but respectful, like he understood exactly how monumental this moment was. As the song ended, the applause washed over me, electric and overwhelming. I turned slightly to the man beside me. You knew he'd do that? I asked, my voice a mix of awe and disbelief. He shook his head slowly, a small smile tugging at his lips. No, but I've learned, sometimes when you're around the right energy, the universe, or the universe of music, has a funny way of noticing you. I blinked at him. The words were cryptic, but there was something magnetic about the way he said them, as if he were speaking from experience. My curiosity was ignited. Who is he? How did he know all of this? Before I could ask, Elliot spoke again, this time in a soft, almost conspiratorial tone. I see you, seat 14B. I don't usually single people out during shows, but tonight is different. A shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't just the recognition, it was the intensity, the warmth, the sense that these weren't rehearsed words. They were genuine. He really had noticed me. The man beside me leaned closer, lowering his voice. I think he's not just looking at you. He's reading the room, reading the energy. And trust me, not everyone can feel that kind of connection. I laughed softly, nervous but thrilled. This is insane. I came here expecting, well, nothing. And now my words faltered. Now I feel like I'm in a dream. He smiled faintly, eyes reflecting the stage lights. Dreams often start in the most ordinary ways. A canceled date, a ticket you almost didn't use, and suddenly, the world shifts around you. I glanced back at Elliot. He strummed the opening chords of another song, slower this time, more intimate. The notes wrapped around the auditorium like silk, and my heart tightened. I found myself humming along softly, the words slipping from my lips as if I had always known them. You know every song, the man beside me said quietly, almost in awe. I I do, I admit it. It's silly, maybe. I've been a fan for years. Music's always, it's like therapy, I guess. Always helped me when things got messy. He nodded knowingly. I get that. Music's a map for the heart, and tonight, it seems your map led you here. A silence settled between us, comfortable and charged, the kind that exists only in moments where words aren't quite enough. I felt a strange trust forming, like this stranger beside me, so mysterious, so familiar, was somehow meant to be part of this night. The song ended, and Elliot's voice softened as he spoke to the audience. Music is about connection, about noticing each other, even in the crowd. Tonight, someone in 14B reminded me why I started this journey. My cheeks flamed. I could hardly believe he was still speaking directly to me, even though the lights and the crowd made it almost surreal. The man beside me gave a subtle nod. See? You're not boring. Not in the slightest. And sometimes, when people call you that, it's just their loss. I laughed, the sound light and genuine. You're full of wisdom, aren't you? He shrugged, still smiling. Maybe. Or maybe I've just been around music long enough to see when magic's happening. The rest of the concert passed in a blur of emotion, melody, and subtle glances between us. Every song seemed to echo something I had felt but never spoken. Every lyric a reminder that this night was no longer about a failed date, but about a world that could surprise you when you least expected it. By the time the final chords reverberated through the hall, my soul felt light, charged with possibility. And the man beside me leaned just slightly closer, almost conspiratorially. You know, the night isn't over yet. I turned to him, curious, a thrill of anticipation coursing through me. Oh? And what do you mean by that? He smirked, mysterious and magnetic, as if he were about to reveal something extraordinary. Sometimes, the best part of the story happens after the music stops. And for the first time all evening, I believed him. The final notes of the concert still echoed in my ears as the audience began to stir, applause fading into murmurs and the shuffle of feet. I lingered in my seat, my body unwilling to let go of the electric energy that had charged the night. The man beside me remained calm, a quiet contrast to my restless excitement. Do you usually just sit through concerts alone? I asked, breaking the silence. The words felt clumsy, almost foolish, but I couldn't stop myself. He tilted his head slightly, his eyes catching the stage lights. Not really, he said, voice measured, almost teasing. But sometimes, the right music and the right company show up when you least expect them. I laughed nervously. Right, like a mysterious stranger in seat 14C. He smiled faintly, and I realized for the first time how familiar he felt, as though he had always been part of the story that had begun with disappointment and awkward anticipation. Something like that, he said, and then his expression softened. You know, I think you deserve to know a few things about tonight. I leaned in, curiosity burning. Like what? He hesitated, almost as if weighing his words carefully. Like how often people pass by magic without noticing it. You noticed it. Even when you were disappointed, even when your evening started wrong. You came anyway, and that courage, it's rare. I felt a warmth in my chest, something between pride and disbelief. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. Not even friends or family. It made me wonder why this stranger seemed to understand me better than anyone ever had. Before I could respond, he shifted slightly, reaching into the bag at his feet. He pulled out a set list from the concert, folded neatly but with a few smudges of pencil marks. I like to collect these, he said. But tonight, I think someone else should have it. He handed it to me with a steady hand. You've earned it. My fingers trembled slightly as I took it. The weight of the paper felt heavier than it should, laden with the significance of the night. I don't know what to say, I whispered. You don't need to say anything, he replied. Just remember this night, and remember yourself in it. You were brave. You didn't let someone else's opinion define your evening. You chose joy anyway. The words felt like a balm, soothing wounds I hadn't fully acknowledged. I thought back to Elliot's dedication, to the way he had singled me out in the crowd. It wasn't just a song, it was validation, a moment of recognition I hadn't realized I craved so deeply. Thank you, I said finally, meaning every word. For noticing, for talking to me, for making this night incredible. He nodded, a quiet satisfaction in his expression. Sometimes people forget that life is made up of small, extraordinary moments. Tonight, you found one. We stood together as the crowd began filing out, the air thick with the scent of popcorn, spilled drinks, and the lingering resonance of music. I glanced around, expecting to feel lost, to be swallowed by the throng of fans leaving the venue. But instead, I felt anchored, strangely grounded by his presence. Can I ask your name? I said, realizing I still didn't know it. He hesitated, then smiled. Let's just say, someone who appreciates music as much as you do. For now, that's enough. I laughed softly, but there was a spark of intrigue in me. Someone who refused to reveal their name? That was new. That was exciting. Outside, the city lights had begun to flicker on, painting the streets with neon and gold. The night was cool, but not uncomfortable. The kind of night that promised more, that whispered secrets in the spaces between street lamps and honking taxis. Do you want to walk a bit? I asked, almost without thinking. The night's still young. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise in his expression. You're not afraid I'm going to vanish into the crowd? I smiled, a mischievous edge to my laughter. I've learned, sometimes the unexpected is exactly what makes life interesting. He chuckled, the sound low and melodic. Fair enough. Lead the way. As we walked, I found myself opening up, telling him little details of my life. My name, Clara Bennett, my age, 28, the cozy apartment I lived in downtown, the small rituals that shaped my mornings and nights. I spoke of my love for music, of the quiet loneliness that often accompanied my routines, and of the unexpected thrill of being stood up yet choosing to stay. He listened, genuinely attentive, never interrupting, never making me feel small. And in turn, he began to reveal fragments of himself, a passion for music that ran deeper than fandom, an admiration for people who lived boldly despite setbacks, and a gentle philosophy that life's disappointments were often the prelude to something remarkable. The night deepened around us, streets emptying, the city settling into a calm rhythm. But inside me, a storm of excitement and curiosity raged. Who is this man really? Why had he appeared at the exact moment I needed him? And most importantly, what part of tonight's story was still unfolding? As we rounded a corner, the soft glow of a late-night cafe beckoned. He glanced at it, then back at me, a hint of mischief in his eyes. I know a place, he said. A quiet spot where music plays softly and the night doesn't rush you away. And somehow I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. The cafe was small, tucked between two shuttered shops, with a single flickering neon sign that read Luna's. Inside, the warm amber lights and soft hum of acoustic music created a cocoon, a world removed from the chaos outside. We slid into a corner booth, away from the few late-night patrons, and I felt a strange sense of ease settle over me. He ordered a black coffee for himself and a chamomile tea for me. The way he moved, deliberate, calm, attentive, was disarmingly comforting. I realized I hadn't felt this relaxed around a stranger in years. You seem different from the person I imagined, I said, tracing the rim of my cup with my finger. I thought tonight would be about disappointment and awkwardness. Instead, it feels like something else entirely. He looked at me, a soft smile tugging at his lips. Life has a funny way of surprising us when we least expect it. And sometimes it takes being disappointed to notice the beauty that's been waiting all along. I laughed softly, though there was a hint of something more, a tremor of curiosity, of wanting to understand him better. You speak like you've seen it all. Maybe not all, he said, taking a slow sip of his coffee, but enough to know that moments like tonight don't happen by accident. I studied him carefully. There was something familiar about his features, something that tugged at a memory buried deep in my mind. And yet, he was entirely new. The contradiction was unsettling and thrilling all at once. So I said, leaning back, you obviously know the band intimately. Do you perform with them? He hesitated, just a fraction, before replying. Something like that, he said, voice even but with an undertone of amusement. Let's just say, I have a hand in the music you enjoyed tonight. I blinked, trying to parse his meaning. Wait, you're telling me you're part of the band? One of them. He nodded slowly. I'm involved in ways people don't usually see. A shiver ran down my spine. Suddenly, Elliot Hart's dedication earlier in the concert made sense. The mysterious, interesting woman in seat 14B wasn't a random gesture. He had known me in that moment, even before I realized it myself. You're Elliot, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a jolt of electricity. He smiled faintly, the corner of his lips lifting just enough to confirm my suspicion. I am, he said softly. And tonight, You made it possible for me to see a different kind of audience reaction. One that wasn't just cheering, but genuine, open hearted. My heart raced. The man I'd been talking to, laughing with, sharing stories and thoughts, was the very same person who had dedicated that song to me, who had somehow turned my lonely night into something unforgettable. I tried to steady my voice. So all along, you were right there. And I had no idea. He chuckled quietly, a sound that was both mischievous and comforting. Yes, but I wanted you to experience it honestly, without knowing. I wanted you to be surprised, to see the music through your own eyes first. The cafe around us faded into the background. The low hum of conversation, the clink of cups, the soft strum of the guitar in the corner, all of it seemed distant, irrelevant. All that mattered was this moment, this conversation, this unspoken connection that had been quietly forming since the concert began. I can't believe this, I said finally, laughing in disbelief. I mean, you here, talking to me like I'm normal. Not just some random fan. You're not random, he said firmly. And you're not ordinary. That's why I noticed you. That's why tonight mattered. The words sank in, warmth spreading through me in a way I hadn't expected. For years, I had allowed myself to be overlooked, dismissed, or dismissed my own worth. Yet here was someone, a complete stranger until tonight, who saw me. Truly saw me. I took a sip of my tea, savoring the flavor, but also savoring the surreal reality of the night. So, what happens now? I asked softly, almost afraid to speak the question aloud. Elliot leaned back, his eyes twinkling with something unreadable. Now, we let tonight exist exactly as it did. And we see where life takes us. No pressure, no expectations. Just possibilities. Possibilities. The word echoed in my mind, a promise, a fragile hope. I realized that for the first time in a long time, my disappointment had turned into opportunity, my loneliness into connection. And somehow, it had all started because I had chosen to keep my concert tickets, even after being stood up. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Outside, the city was quiet now, a soft hum of distant traffic and occasional sirens. The night felt infinite, a vast canvas on which anything could happen. And as I sat there, sipping tea across from Elliot Hart, the man whose music had unknowingly carried me through so many ordinary days, I knew that the story of tonight was just the beginning. The night air outside the cafe was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain that had fallen earlier. Streetlights cast long, golden reflections on the wet pavement, and the occasional sound of a distant car horn reminded us that the city never truly slept. We stepped out, leaving the warmth of Luna's behind, and walked side by side without speaking, letting the rhythm of our steps match the hum of the street. Finally, I broke the silence. I have to know, I said, glancing at him. How did you write that song? How did you know what I needed to hear? He smiled, though it was tinged with something heavier this time, a shadow behind the charm. Songs are like windows, he said slowly. You can see through them, but only if you're willing to look. I write because I need to understand life, myself, and people. That dedication tonight, it wasn't random. I just had a feeling. I felt a lump form in my throat. It was strange, surreal, and exhilarating, all at once. I had spent years trying to be noticed, and here he was, someone whose music had traveled to my ears and soul without me even realizing he knew me personally. Clara, he said softly, his voice breaking the spell of my thoughts. Do you ever feel like the world is moving too fast and you're just trying to keep up? I nodded, surprised at how accurately he had voiced what I often felt. All the time, I admitted. I feel like I'm constantly chasing something, attention, approval, maybe even myself. And most of the time, I feel invisible. That's the irony, he said, his eyes reflecting the city lights. The people who feel invisible are often the most interesting. They just don't always get noticed. That's why tonight mattered to me. Because you noticed the music, not the fame, not the glamour, just the song itself. You were present. I swallowed hard, the words settling deep inside me. There was something about the way he spoke, the sincerity, The vulnerability, it made me feel like I wasn't just Clara from some ordinary apartment in Boston, born 32 years ago, living alone, quietly battling the monotony of office life and the sting of failed relationships. I was someone real, seen, acknowledged. We continued walking, our path taking us past quiet bookstores, closed bakery windows, and a small park where a fountain glimmered under the streetlights. Elliot's presence felt grounding yet mysterious. I wanted to know everything about him, yet I sensed he was careful, he shared, but only just enough. You write songs for yourself, for the band, or for someone else? I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. Sometimes all three at once, he said, laughing lightly. But the most honest ones are always for someone else. Or maybe for someone who needs to hear them. I don't always know who that person is. Sometimes it's you. I stopped walking, surprised by the depth of his confession. Me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, he said simply, meeting my gaze. I've watched people from the crowd, listened to how they react, what moves them, and I try to capture it. Music isn't just about notes or melodies, it's about connection. That's why tonight, sitting next to you, seeing your reactions, noticing your emotions, it became more than just a performance. It became real. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. My mind replayed every detail, the concert, the empty seat next to me at first, the dedication, the laughter we shared over coffee. Everything felt surreal, yet grounding at the same time. I can't believe I almost didn't come tonight, I admitted, shaking my head. If I'd let disappointment stop me, I'd have missed all of this. He reached out, lightly brushing a strand of hair from my face, careful, respectful. Life has a way of putting you in the right place at the right time. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's a little dramatic. I laughed softly, a sound that felt lighter than it had in years. You make it sound like fate. Or destiny. Maybe it is, he said, eyes gleaming. Or maybe it's just music, coincidence, and people paying attention. We reached the edge of the park, where the city opened up into a quiet square. The fountain water shimmered, reflecting the stars and streetlights like scattered diamonds. The world felt still, intimate, and infinite all at once. I want to know more about you, I said finally, feeling bold. Not just the music, but everything. Your life, your past, why you write the way you do. Elliot's expression softened. And I want to know you too, Clara. Your world, your thoughts, your fears, even the parts you think are invisible. If we're being honest, that's how connections last. Not by knowing the surface, but by seeing what's underneath. As the clock in the square chimed 1 a.m., I realized that tonight had already rewritten everything I thought I knew about chance, loneliness, looked and invisible. I was leaving, walking under starlight with a man who made me feel seen in ways I had almost forgotten were possible. For the first time in a long while, I felt alive, and I knew, somewhere deep down, that this night, strange, accidental, magical, was only the beginning. The night had stretched into the quiet hours when the city seemed to hold its breath. Streetlights cast pools of soft amber over the sidewalk, and the occasional hum of a distant car reminded us that the world still moved, even if we had stepped out of its rush for a while. I walked beside Elliot, my heart still humming with the energy of the concert, my mind spinning from the intimacy of our conversation in the park. Clara, he said, breaking the comfortable silence. His tone carried that same gentle curiosity that had drawn me in from the start. Do you ever think about the choices you make and wonder what life would have been if you'd chosen differently? I paused, my gaze fixed on the glimmering fountain behind us, where the water caught the dim light and fractured it into tiny dancing sparks. All the time, I admitted. Sometimes I replay moments in my head, the decisions I've made, the risks I didn't take, the people I didn't fight for. Life feels like a string of almosts and could have beens. Elliot nodded slowly. I know that feeling. I've made my share of mistakes, taken chances that didn't pay off, and lost myself a few times along the way. But the thing I've learned is that the moments you think you've missed aren't always gone. Sometimes They return in unexpected ways. I turned to look at him, intrigued by the weight behind his words. Unexpected ways? I asked, feeling the pull of curiosity stronger than ever. Yes, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Like tonight. You were ready to let disappointment ruin your evening, and instead, you ended up here, talking to me, sharing a story that might never have happened otherwise. Life has this strange habit of sneaking in surprises when you least expect them. The sincerity in his eyes made my chest tighten. I wanted to tell him everything: my past, the loneliness of my apartment in Boston, the quiet struggles of my office life, the failed relationships, the endless cycle of hope and disappointment. And yet, part of me held back, wary of exposing too much too soon. Tell me something real, I said finally, surprising myself with the boldness in my voice. Not the public version, not the music version, the real you. The one nobody else sees. He chuckled softly, the sound warm and genuine. That's dangerous territory, he said. But, okay, here goes. Elliot's eyes softened, and he took a slow breath, as if gathering courage from the cool night air. I've always felt like I was living in two worlds, he began. One is the stage, the songs, the applause, the version everyone thinks they know. The other is the quiet, private me, the one who struggles, doubts, and longs for connection. That part doesn't get much attention, and it's often lonely. But when I write songs, I try to merge those worlds to reach someone who sees beyond the performance. And tonight, I think I found someone who does. I felt a shiver run down my spine, a mixture of awe and something deeper, something fragile and precious. Clara, he continued, I don't usually do this, open up to strangers so quickly. But tonight, it feels like. I don't know, like the world finally noticed me. And you noticed me. Elliot's smile deepened, and for a moment, the city seemed to disappear, leaving just the two of us standing under the glow of the streetlights. Then maybe tonight isn't just a coincidence, he said softly. Maybe it's the start of something real. We continued walking, the silence now comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Our conversation had shifted the balance of the night, turning what had begun as an ordinary outing into something intimate and transformative. Every corner we turned, every empty street we passed, felt like a stage set for the quiet magic between us. Eventually, we found ourselves outside a small, dimly lit bridge overlooking the river. The water reflected the city lights, rippling gently as if the river itself was alive and watching us. I leaned on the railing, and Elliot stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence. Clara, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, tonight could be a memory we carry forever if we let it. But memories are fragile. They need attention, nurturing, courage. I turned to face him fully, my heart in my throat. I'm ready, I said simply. I don't want to miss this, us. Elliot's hand brushed against mine, tentative but deliberate. The touch sent a jolt through me, electric and grounding at the same time. Then let's see where this goes, he said, a quiet promise lingering in his words. And in that moment, under the city lights, with the river murmuring below us and the world stretched out around us, I realized that everything, the disappointment, the concert, the unexpected encounter, had led to this singular, perfect night. The following morning, sunlight poured into my small apartment in Boston, spilling across the kitchen counter where I had left my coffee half finished the night before. Birds chirped outside the window, their chirps bright and persistent, a stark contrast to the quiet intimacy of the previous evening. I rubbed my eyes, still replaying the night over and over in my mind, as if the memory alone could convince me that it wasn't just a dream. I checked my phone almost compulsively. No messages. No calls. Just the usual flood of work emails and reminders I normally ignored. And yet I felt that pull, the one Elliot had left behind, subtle but insistent. By mid-morning, I couldn't resist. I opened my laptop and typed his name into the search bar, curious to learn more about him, about the man who had written the songs that felt like they spoke directly to my soul. A few clicks later, I found an article detailing a small, upcoming tour, interviews, and even a glimpse into his personal life, just enough to make him feel real, not a fleeting fantasy from a magical night. But reality crept in with a bitter edge. He was a musician, his life full of travel, fans, commitments. And I was just Clara, an office worker, a woman who spent more evenings alone than she would admit. What were the chances that our paths could align again? The days stretched on with agonizing slowness. Every email, every phone call, every mundane task felt like an echo of emptiness. I kept glancing at my phone, hoping for a message, any sign from him, but the silence was deafening. Late that afternoon, my thoughts spiraled. What if last night had been a fluke? A perfect alignment of luck, coincidence, and my willingness to embrace something new? What if I was fooling myself, reading too much into a single night, a single conversation, a single brush of his hand? Yet, deep down, I couldn't ignore the magnetic pull I felt toward him. Something about Elliot had broken through the layers of loneliness I had wrapped around myself for years. He had seen me, not the version I presented to the world, but the real me, and that recognition was intoxicating. By evening, I had made a decision. I grabbed my jacket and keys and stepped out into the crisp December air, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The concert had been over, the city had moved on, but I wasn't willing to let the magic end. I called the number I had managed to find online, a number listed for booking inquiries, but I hoped someone there could direct me to him. The line rang twice before a friendly voice answered. "Hello, City Lights Management. How can I help you?" I hesitated, my palms sweating. "I'm trying to reach Elliot. Elliot Harper. Is there any way I could speak to him?" There was a pause on the other end, just long enough to make my stomach twist into knots. "Hold on," the voice said finally. "I can put you through. One moment." My heart nearly stopped when I heard his voice, warm and unmistakable, come through the line. "Clara," he said, as if confirming a memory. "I didn't expect to hear from you today." I I couldn't stop thinking about last night, I admitted. "I know it's crazy, but I felt something real. And I didn't want to let it go without at least trying to reach you." There was silence for a moment, and then he chuckled softly. "It's not crazy," he said. "I felt it too. All night. I've been thinking about you, wondering if it was just the music and the moment, or something more." "Something more," I echoed, hope rising in my chest. "Yes," he said firmly. "And I want to see where it goes. If you're willing, I'd like to see you again. Maybe somewhere that isn't a concert, somewhere just for us." I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. "I'd like that," I whispered, almost afraid to believe it. "Good," he said. "How about tomorrow evening? There's a little cafe near the river I like, quiet, cozy. Just us." I smiled, the tension in my body melting away. "I'll be there," I said, feeling a thrill of anticipation, a surge of courage I hadn't felt in years. As I hung up, I realized how fragile and fleeting moments like these could be. A single night had changed everything, turned disappointment into possibility, loneliness into connection, and music into a language that spoke directly to the heart. For the first time in a long while, I felt alive, not just surviving the day-to-day, but truly living, daring to reach for something beyond the familiar, beyond the safe. And tomorrow, I would step into that unknown with him, ready to embrace whatever came next. The city lights twinkled outside my window as I prepared for the night ahead, a quiet reminder that sometimes the universe had a way of guiding us, even when the path seemed uncertain. The next evening arrived, draping Boston in a gentle twilight that shimmered across the river. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of winter approaching. I stepped out of my apartment building, bundled in a warm coat, my breath forming tiny clouds with each exhale. My heart was a drum in my chest, nervous, excited, and impossibly hopeful all at once. The little cafe Elliot had mentioned was tucked into a quiet street, its soft amber lights spilling onto the sidewalk. A bell jingled as I entered, and there he was, sitting at a corner table, casually leaning back, looking almost ordinary, except for the spark in his eyes that I remembered so vividly from the concert. "Clara," he said softly, rising slightly as I approached. The warmth in his voice wrapped around me, and I felt the tension of the day fall away. "Elliot," I replied, smiling, trying to hide the flutter in my stomach. He gestured for me to sit. The cafe was cozy, the low hum of conversation blending with soft music in the background. It felt like a world apart, far from the chaos of concerts and crowded streets, a space made for connection. We talked for hours about music, our lives, the little quirks that made us who we were. He listened as if every word mattered, and I shared stories I rarely told anyone. The childhood in my small Boston neighborhood, the awkward teenage years, the quiet heartbreaks that had shaped me. In return, he revealed pieces of himself I hadn't expected: the pressure of fame, the loneliness behind the stage lights, the constant travel, and the fear of losing himself in the persona everyone adored. At one point, I laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in months, and he reached across the table, lightly brushing my hand. "You're amazing," he said. "Not just because of the music, but you have this way of seeing the world that's rare." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, and for a moment, the world outside that cafe disappeared. No phones, no notifications, no schedules, just the two of us, suspended in a space where everything felt possible. Then a pause. Elliot's eyes darkened slightly, and I sensed the weight he carried. "Clara," he said carefully, "there's something I need to be honest about." My stomach clenched. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "The band, the tours, the shows. It's my life, and it's unpredictable. I don't want you to get hurt or to feel like you're living in my shadow. I like you, really like you, but I need you to know that this path, it's not simple." I considered his words, the honesty in his voice. "Elliot," I said softly, "I don't expect simple. I just want real. I want someone who's willing to try, even if it's messy, even if it's uncertain. I've spent too long waiting for life to be easy. I want it to be true." He smiled, the tension easing from his shoulders. "Then let's try," he said. "No promises about what comes next, but let's not let fear stop us." We sat in silence for a moment, hands brushing across the table, letting the connection between us settle like a gentle melody. Outside, the city lights reflected in the river, shimmering like stars in motion. As we stepped out of the cafe, the winter air nipped at our cheeks, but the warmth between us was undeniable. Elliot paused, looking at me with that same spark that had captivated me weeks ago. "Clara," he said, almost whispering, "do you want to come with me to the next show? Just as us. No fans, no crowd, just the music and the night." I hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Yes, I'd like that." That night, I realized something powerful. Life didn't have to be predictable to be extraordinary. Sometimes, the moments that felt impossible, the ones that made your heart race and your mind spin, were the ones worth embracing. And as we walked along the river, shoulders brushing, laughter spilling between us, I knew that whatever came next, uncertainty, adventure, or challenges, we would face it together. The music, the chance encounters, the spark of connection, it had all led to this. In the end, I understood that magic wasn't just in the concerts or the dedication of a song. It was in the courage to show up, to take a risk, to let someone see the real you. And as the city hummed around us, I felt, for the first time in a long while, completely and unapologetically alive. Oh, my dears, can you imagine sitting alone, disappointed, and suddenly finding magic right next to you? That was my night, and maybe one day it could be yours too. Tell me in the comments what you would have done if your date walked out. Would you sulk at home or take a chance on adventure? I cannot wait to read your stories. If this little tale made your heart flutter, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story that stirs the soul. Every click, every comment, every share helps bring more stories to life for all of us who love a little magic and a lot of heart. And remember, my loves, sometimes the world surprises you when you least expect it. Keep your heart open. You never know who might end up sitting next to you.